Hare Krishna. So I each of you mute yourself, or somebody, the host, who can help me doing this. No, it's fine. Okay. Okay. So the topic of our series is to learn emotional intelligence from our timeless scripture, Bhagavad-gita. So what would you be doing through this course? You're going to upgrade your inner software for a joyful life. So this is what the session is intended to do. So I want to start this session with a small test. Okay. So I hope all of you are alert. Okay. Here is how the test goes. Can you name the emotion that you are feeling right now? You can either share it on the chat or you can tell me. Unmute yourself and tell.
Peace.
Peace. Great. Any more?
Excitement.
Excitement. Wow. Okay. Exciting and peaceful. Rare and great. Happy and excited. Wow. These are beautiful emotions. Happiness. Very nice. Any more? Joy. Beautiful. Bliss. Oh, wow. So happy. You're all very positive in your emotional status. And interested. Varshini. That's interesting answer. Okay. Any more?
Blessed.
Yes. Curious? Somebody said that?
Blessed.
Blessed. Oh, wow. That's very deep. Thank you. Thank you for sharing what you're feeling. So this has become a rare commodity these days, to get in touch with your own emotions, to actually feel them and to express them. Yeah. So that will be our topic, our discussion. And of course, we go much deeper and wider into the subject matter through the lens of Gita. So this is a 4-session course. Today being the first session, we will have 3 more sessions on this topic. Okay, so let's get into the topic straight away. Emotional intelligence. So this topic is something that's one of the most searched and researched topic in the recent past. Okay, so let's define each of these terms. Emotions. So what are basically emotions? What are emotions? Yeah, let's explore what emotions are. So emotions, there's a psychologist in the year 1970. His name is Paul Ekman. So he's done some research into the human emotions. And he came out with a list of 6 basic emotions that every human being goes through. He categorized them into 6 basic emotions. Okay, what were these 6 basic emotions? He said they're happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. So he said these are the 6 basic emotions. And the remaining emotions are probably secondary to them or tertiary to them, but these are the 6 basic things. So all of us are aware what these emotions are. Happiness, so much, something that's so much searched after, chased after, something that everybody wants. Okay, so especially from the year 1960s, I guess, there is a lot of research going on in the topic of happiness because it's diminishing. Okay, so that's happiness. Then sadness, yes, all of us know what sadness is. It's grief, disappointment, discontent, some with feelings of withdrawal. So all these combine to form the feeling of sadness, the emotion of sadness. So what's fear? Again, fear is again a very powerful emotion, something that makes people do extreme things. fear, it makes us flight, or many repercussions are born out of fear. Yeah, because fear challenges the survival of a person, and it's an instinct that makes a person take extreme decisions and also quick decisions. Fear is another emotion, a basic emotion. So disgust, of course, disgust is another emotion, primary emotion, because of which a person is repulsed, withdrawn from a particular experience, or avoids a particular situation. So that's disgust. Anger, so something we are all aware of, most of us want to avoid, most of us have a tough time dealing with, and we do attend so many seminars on the management of anger. So in fact, people most troubled are the people around us, including ourselves. So anger is another basic emotion. And of course, surprise, this is something very positive, pleasant, and we all love, especially on a birthday or some special days, when one of our dear ones shows up with some nice gifts. Like recently, some of my very good friends and students have shown up with some nice gifts. Surprise, a very positive, very fulfilling, very happy emotion. So this is how Paul Ekman has classified emotions into 6 basic emotions. So later on, much research was done, and there were 27 basic emotions that were, further, emotions are further classified into. And in fact, there are some scientists who put forth the understanding of a wheel of emotions, saying that emotions are of different shades, just like you mix red and green, you get brown, and there are so many shades in between. So there are 2 different emotions, and there are many shades in between, which you can name differently. Yeah, something like, you mix joy, trust, there is abundance, love, and these are all different shades of the same emotions going, one going into the other. So that's how emotions were studied, in the recent past. So, but why are emotions important? Next question. Why are emotions important? Why should we even know about them? Yeah? So why are emotions important? Because they underlie our mood. They underlie our behavior. They underlie our interactions with each other. And most important, emotions underlie our decision making. This is how important emotions are. And this is how, and I will tell you later on why it is important to be aware of our emotions. Okay. So emotions do underlie our mood and behavior. Does anybody disagree with that? For example, we are in a good mood. Wow. We pour out our love, affection towards everybody who comes with us, and we're so positive, we're so jolly, we're so open to learn new things. We're so quick at work, we're prompt in our submission of deadlines. And we're very positive about everything. And even during that time, even if some setbacks come, we can handle them more easily. Because the mood is elevated, because the underlying emotion is that of happiness. On the other hand, when the underlying mood is that of distress or sadness, it takes a while. I mean, everything takes time, and we are in a mood of, let's say, really probably reflecting, or we're in a sulky mood, or we're kind of taking time for our responses, and we're in a mood of procrastinating everything else. So all these are repercussions, because the underlying mood is, emotion is that of sadness. Interactions, all of us know very well, our emotions are in direct proportion to our interactions. Yeah, we are in a elated mood or in a happy mood, our interactions are so positive, so confident. And let's say if the underlying mood is that of fear, you're facing an interview, a job interview. Internally, there is some fear, maybe because your resume isn't really honest enough, or maybe there are some black holes, yeah, in the resume. So how would your interaction be when the underlying emotion is that of fear? You're not very confident. You're not looking into the eyes. Yeah, whatever is the emotion, it shows up in the body language. In fact, emotions have three different components. One is a subjective component, second is a physiological component, and third is the expressive component. What is subjective component? How the emotion is felt. So what is the physiological component? How this emotion sinks into our body language, yeah, and the bodily processes that happen within the chemical reactions. And the third component is the expressive component. That is how we express this particular emotion in our behavior. So these are the three different components of an emotion. So as I said, coming back to this job interview again, the underlying emotion that's within us is that of fear. So how does it show in our interaction? We cannot look straight into the face, or we look here and there. And even it affects our decision making many a times. So if the job offer isn't really that which suits your expectations, but you have some underlying fears, but nonetheless, you just accept it because you have some fear. That means that fear impacted your decision making. So that's how emotions are so very important to be understood, to be monitored, to be regulated, to be controlled, and to be expressed appropriately. That's actually what is emotional intelligence. Okay, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is nothing but utilizing our intellectual process, okay, or the intellectual prowess to, regulate and express emotions in constructive ways. That's emotional intelligence in short. So basically, if you see, for example, taking ahead the decision-making process, emotions can impact decision-making as simple as, let's say what I want to have for breakfast today, or something as big as whom we are going to choose as the leader of our nation. In fact, the emotions of Arjuna at the beginning of the battlefield of Kurukshetra has impacted such a major decision. He was so swayed away by his emotions that he did not want to fight the world war. It was the biggest world war about to begin. And being swayed away by his emotion, Arjuna decided not to fight. This is what kind of an impact an emotion can have on the lives of millions of people. The whole destiny of the earth was determined the emotion of one person. Can you imagine the impact of emotions? So that's how significant and important emotions are, because they underlie our mood, interactions, and decision makings. So coming to the topic, so what is emotional intelligence? So emotional intelligence, emotions, intelligence. So as I just told, emotions are something at the level of our consciousness, our heart, and intelligence. What emotional intelligence means, utilizing our intelligence or our intellectual abilities to monitor these emotions, to regulate them, and to channelize them in constructive ways so that the outcome is something positive, desirable, and fruitful. That's emotional intelligence. How does it help in daily life? I'll tell you with some examples. It makes it easier to understand. Let's say there's a newly married couple, wife and husband. So the wife, all of a sudden she started showing tantrums. Yeah, tantrums which are not directly understood by the husband. Yeah, maybe in the form of being a little insensitive, or in the form of, dishing out burnt food, burnt khichdi or burnt dosa, or with chutney with excessive salt. Sometimes these are things that are perceived externally, but if you go to the internal matter, what actually happened is that the girl or the lady is internally disturbed. So if the husband is intelligent enough, or he has good emotional intelligence, he would understand what are the emotions that this spouse is going through. Yeah, why she is behaving in that way. He would be able to decode the behavior by connecting them to her emotional turmoil. And he would be able to address them appropriately, knowing where they have gone wrong. So this is exactly emotional intelligence, not just understanding one's own emotions. It's also about understanding another person's emotion and to address them. Yeah, how difficult the situation would be if, imagine you have a roommate and she is in such a sad mood and you're not able to even understand what she's going through. So what kind of relationship that is? So that is why emotional intelligence is necessary to uplift one's own life and also to maintain good relationships with people around us. And most importantly, to form long-lasting relationships that are stable and smooth sailing. So that's emotional intelligence. This is the definition. The definition is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. So basically, it is a key to both personal and professional success, in short. So going back to the history, actually, emotional intelligence as a concept, it has evolved much earlier in the year 1930s. There's a scientist called Thorndike. Yeah. So this person has coined a term called social intelligence to explain about intelligence that's important to have positive social interactions. And this was further taken ahead by another scientist called Wechsler. He further coined some forms of intelligence that are important for an overall success in life. So later also there was Howard Gardner in the year 1970. He spoke about the theory of multiple intelligences. I think I have discussed this with many of you, I guess, who are my students for Evolve. I've discussed about this multiple intelligences, right? Like there are 8 intelligences. And he spoke about these intelligences and their relevance, because generally intelligence for us, we only think of IQ. That means one's cognitive abilities and problem solving abilities. But it's not necessary that intelligence is confined to these narrow understandings. Even if a person is able to interact well with the other people, that's intelligence. If a person is able to understand oneself better, that's intelligence. If a person is able to arrange their room in a very beautiful way, in a very harmonic way, even that's intelligence. If a person is able to sing as per the Shruti and Laya, that's also intelligence. If a person is able to dance according to the rhythm of the music, that's also intelligence. So this is how intelligence has much broader and broader perspectives, especially when you link it with the emotions. So that's what actually Gita tells us. Yeah, the Gita's understanding of emotional intelligence is far, far much more wider and deeper. So this is the beauty of our scriptures. So actually there's a nice article, a research paper that has been submitted, which actually speaks about the limitations of the kind of research that's going on the emotional intelligence, because it's almost been over a century that so much of research is going on in the name of emotions and intelligence. But if you see, they do talk about becoming aware of one's emotions and dealing with them, but there's no foolproof method of how to actually regulate, control, and channelize them. There are some tips, but they're not really foolproof. And if you turn to Gita, you actually get an understanding that's analytically so holistic, which I will tell you right now, I'll share with you right now. If you analyze it, it's so much more complete, so much more holistic. And if you look at the kind of methodologies that are given to regulate the emotions and to control and to divert them and to direct them, they are foolproof. You follow them and the results are guaranteed. I mean, that was shown in the life of Arjuna. Arjuna, pre-Bhagavad-gita, he was full of anxiety. He declined to fight. He was overcome by fear, weakness of heart, depression. But post-Bhagavad-gita, what was his mood? He was totally confident. He was a warrior who fought the whole big world war for 18 days. So that was the transformation he went through after having heard the Gita. So that is why our Vedic scriptures are fully, full of information, not just information, so much of knowledge that is so relevant, which can take us much deeper into the understanding of the real turmoils and to how to overcome them. Yeah, so that's why turning to Bhagavad Gita to have a holistic understanding helps us much better. So there are 4 components of emotional intelligence as such. This is given by Daniel Goleman. Yeah, so basically After the multiple intelligences have been coined, again, the actual term of emotional intelligence has been coined in the year 1995. Sorry, 1985. Yeah, 1985. There's a psychologist by the name Payne Wayne. Yeah, he coined the term emotional intelligence. Later, it has become very, very popular in the year 95 by Daniel Goleman with his book called Emotional Intelligence, Why It Is More Important Than IQ. You can search it on Google. It's a very, very interesting book that he has written. So basically, he has classified this emotional intelligence into 4 components. We will utilize this as a framework for our next 4 sessions, but we will discuss the underlying concepts from our Gita. So here is what it is, the 4 components, important components. First one is self-awareness. The second is self-management. Third is social awareness. And fourth is relationship management. So these are the 4 components. And today we're going to deal only with the first component, that is self-awareness. So here is the title of our session today. We're going to begin. Getting in touch with the real you. So the real you. See, there are 2 extremes that people tend to get in relation to emotions. One extreme is that of getting swayed away by emotions, getting totally controlled by emotions and swayed away by them. Yeah, that means acting irrationally. The other extreme is denial of emotions. That means so many start denying their own feelings and emotions and treat them as non-existent or even suppress them and not express them because they don't know how to express them in constructive ways. Out of fear, they start suppressing them. If you see, actually, many elderly women or women after a certain age, or even youngsters, because of unexpressed emotions, they tend to develop a lot of bodily ailments. There's a science called metaphysics, which states that more than 95% of bodily ailments are born from the mind. That's striking, isn't it? So it's very important. That is why to have a proper understanding of one's emotions and how to express them. As I said, there are 2 extremes. One extreme is to, express in a very unregulated fashion and actually be victimized by the repercussions. And the other extreme is being in a state of denial, denying your emotions and get into a state of suppression and non-expression. So both are not the ideal things because their repercussions are not good enough. So what is ideal? The ideal thing is to get in touch with the real you, because to become aware of one's emotions and express them constructively is a very satisfying experience to the self. One can lead a very satisfying, happy, and joyful life if one can learn the art of expressing one's emotions constructively by actually understanding their relevance in one's life. So this is what this session is aimed at. The session is aimed at helping each other, getting in touch with our real self. Okay, so let's start. How do we get in touch with our real self? Now let's ask this question. Who is the real you? Is it that person whom you wake up early in the morning and see in the mirror? Is that the real you? Yes or no? It's a question. Okay, there's so many answers which have a strong no. Okay. So here's an interesting answer. Okay. No, okay. There's so many answers which are, the real us is when no one is watching us. Interesting. Yeah, so Disha is speaking in terms of the real character, the value system, the internal side of us. So she has a very good intrapersonal intelligence. Nice. By the way, if any of you want to know and measure your EI, you can just get in touch with me after the session. I can give you some tests to measure your EI, intelligent emotional intelligence. Okay. Yeah. So my question was, is that the real you whom you see in the mirror? So many of you said no, but I'll give you a more comprehensive answer to this. It's both yes and no. Why is it yes and no? So the real you is Atma. This is something all our dear Gita students know. But what is the definition of Atma? So the Vedic dictionary is very broad, as I said, and it's all inclusive. Atma can mean the body, the mind, the intelligence, the soul, and the super soul. It's just not the soul. Yeah, it's all inclusive. Even the body, the mind, the intelligence, soul, super soul, all these five together. The word Atma can be used to define any of these. Okay, somebody posted something. Eternal soul. Yes. Yes, Saisri. So let's get into some details and analysis of this. Okay. Okay. Some of these things you might know, but there are some interesting concepts for all those who already know something about body, mind, intelligence. Okay. So that's why stay tuned. Okay. So our body is basically divided into this three. There is the gross body, there is subtle body, and the soul. Okay. So most of us know this, but I'll get into some more interesting details about this. Okay. So the gross body is composed of matter, which are the five basic elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Yeah. And subtle body, we all know it has mind, intelligence, and false ego. And the soul, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. So why are we discussing all this? Because we're talking about self-awareness. So let's get to know what the real self is. So once we know what the self is, then we can start to get aware of it. Yeah, it's a gradual process. So that's what gross body and subtle body is. Body, as I said, earth, water, fire, and air, and ether. So this is a very well-known fact. You know, the tissues and everything is made of earth. The blood, mucus, and all that is made of water. And there is fire that aids in digestion. There is air that moves above and below. And then ether, which is like the interstitial spaces in between our cells. So this is what is comprising our body. And mind, yeah. Now the most interesting subject matter, the mind. The mind has two components, the conscious and the subconscious. Yeah. So the conscious, basically mind is a storehouse of memories. Yeah. All our experiences are stored in the mind as good or bad. Yeah. So why is it that sometimes we have some strong likes for some things and strong dislikes for something? Because the mind has stored it as a positive experience. Like whenever you see a nice, let's say an ice cream, which is on top of that, there is some strawberry sauce with nice nuts and jellos, and which is dripping with some honey, let's say, wow, immediately there is some watering in the mouth. Why? Because the mind has stored it as a positive experience in the past. And the same mind, there's something called a subconscious mind. Subconscious mind is a storehouse of attachments and hatred. Yeah, there's something called attachment and there's something called hatred. Sometimes, you see, without a reason, we have some attachments for some things. Let's say some people are naturally attached to nature. To see the rising sun or the setting sun or the clear blue skies, or even the sea of warm, which has a lot of colors crawling on a leaf, they feel so, lively about it, so enthused about it. Why? That kind of an attachment is coming from past experience, not necessarily this birth, from many, many births. But some people have some natural hatreds or phobias. So these are all deep-rooted in the subconscious mind. So mind has so conscious mind is called the mana and subconscious mind is called the chitta. This is according to the Vedic dictionary, mana and chitta. And There's something called intelligence. This is the most important, whose function is to discriminate between the good and the bad. Yeah. So, and it's a lot of power. And there is also the ego. So ego's job is identification. Okay. And what you identify with makes it a false ego or the right ego. When is it the false ego? When you're identifying with the body, that thinking this, I am this body, or I am this mind, I am these emotions, that's false ego. You're situated on the false platform. What's true ego? Identification with the soul. So I will explain you with this, with some examples, it becomes more clear. In fact, this is the whole crisis that Arjuna was going through on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The whole emotional turmoil he went through was because he was situated on this platform of false ego. Yeah, and Krishna came and did the magic by transforming this false ego into true ego, and all equations got solved. Yeah. So some examples of false ego is, being excessively attached to the body, thinking that the body is me, and those who are related to this body are mine, and I'm very possessive about them, and I want them to be successful in life, no matter what, even at the cost of others, going through a lot of pain and trouble. So this is how Dhritarashtra, he was like situated in that consciousness of excessive bodily attachment. He wanted his son Duryodhana to be on the top. He wanted him to become the king, even after knowing that he was such a demoniac person. Yeah, so much so that right in his presence, he actually, went to the extent of disrobing Draupadi. Even that he kind of overlooked, and he still wanted his son to become the king, knowing that he had zero virtues. Why is that? Excessive bodily attachment. He never corrected him. He could not correct him right from his young age. And not correcting. Even at the time of birth of Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra was told by their family priest that this person is going to bring about the greatest misfortune to the entire Kuru dynasty. Please forsake him. But Dhritarashtra did not listen to him. He said, my blood, my flesh and blood, how can I give up? He did not forsake him. So that's how Duryodhana was born, and he grew up, and in fact, he did become the cause of the demolition of the entire Kuru clan. So this is what excessive bodily attachment can do. We'll take another example. Who is this? Towards your left. Can you recognize who is this? Okay, somebody said. Yeah, exactly. Kaikeyi. Yeah. So Kaikeyi, and she was so attached to her son Bharat, and she wanted him to become the king. Yeah. And she was emotionally disturbed when she understood that it was Ram who's going to be coronated as the king. And she got swayed away by the talks of Manthara. Yeah, and she carried that emotional contagion. Yeah, so we all speak about the COVID contagion, right? Spreading from one person to the other. So she carried her emotional contagion and spread it to Dashrath Maharaj, saying that Bharat has to become the king and Ram has to be sent to the forests. And it was such a sad thing. She suffered enormously. Yeah, for the next 14 years. Dashrath Maharaj left his body in that pain. Yeah, Ram, Sita, and Lakshman, they left the kingdom of Ayodhya, and all the Ayodhyavasis suffered such a huge turmoil for 14 years. Why? Because of that emotional attachment of one person, because of the false attachment of one person, that is Kaikeyi, towards Bharat. So this is what, for excessive attachment based on the bodily platform can do. It can actually make one restless. It can make one lose all peace, and it can shatter the peace of everybody around. Another example is the example of Arjuna. This is the same turmoil he was going through at the beginning of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He couldn't reconcile to the fact that he was fighting a war that is his own duty. He got carried away by his attachment to his kinsmen who were on the other side. Whom he's seeing on the opposite side is his own grandsire Bhishma Dev, his own Guru Drona, and all his relatives, cousins, kinsmen. So if I fight against them and all of them are killed, how will I enjoy this kingdom all alone without them? So he was carried away by that bodily attachment. So this is what I was telling about the ego, identification with the body and mind. So this is a chariot. So our Shastras compare our whole body to this chariot. Yeah, the senses being the horses, the reins being the mind, the driver being the intelligence, and this passenger being the soul. So stay tuned. I will try to tell you the connection between this and the emotional intelligence. So the mind is something, as I said, it's a storehouse of all emotions, all experiences. So when the ego is identifying with the body, the senses rule, and they tend to take you in different directions. That, listen to this music, let's eat this food, or this gives you pleasure, this makes you happy. And the mind is all obliging. It says, okay, yes, go get it, keep yourself happy. And then the intelligence does not have much control. Yes. So this is what generally happens in a normal person's life. But a person who is into the process of yoga, that is one who is trying to connect to the higher self, for them, the intellectual prowess is very high. That is, the intelligence is properly situated. They develop what is called a spiritual intelligence. And when the intelligence is spiritualized, this whole chariot of the body and mind is running in the right direction and smoothly. And there is harmony in one's life. So how do you see this harmony? So there are two different types of qualities. Yeah. The two different qualities are, there are innate qualities and there are acquired qualities. So you have seen the function of the mind and intelligence. What is the function of the soul? It is Satchidananda. It's eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. So when a person tries, identifies with the soul and acts in that identity, these divine qualities of the soul start manifesting and permeating through the mind and intelligence. So that's how, whenever you see a saintly person or a person who is spiritually a little advanced, you see that, right? You see that luster in their face or that shine through their eyes and that radiance in their complexion or whatever, that serenity in their presence. Why does it happen? Because the qualities of that soul is manifesting and permeating through their body and mind. So that's because the soul has very divine qualities, the qualities of compassion, tolerance, love, peace, all those virtues which everybody is so attracted to. They're so naturally present within the soul. They are the innate qualities. But the external qualities, especially those disturbing qualities that we see in a person, they're acquired qualities like jealousy, undue comparisons, the competitiveness, anxiety, the anger, lust, greed, or all these things. They're all acquired qualities. They're not natural to the soul. So that they manifest because of more of being in the bodily platform. Okay, so here's where emotional intelligence comes into picture. So what does emotional intelligence do? It can make you more self-aware. Yeah, the very first component of emotional intelligence is that of self-awareness. So how does self-awareness help? I will tell you towards the end of the session. But yeah, so emotional intelligence is what can help a person to acquire these qualities, yeah, to sharpen their intelligence. And this starts, as I said, with self-awareness. So and self-awareness has three components. What are those three components? Emotional self-awareness, accurate self-assessment, and self-confidence. So this is a little technical, but I'll just tell you what they are and how it helps. So emotional self-awareness. So as I just begin the session, I asked each of you, what is the emotion that you're going through right now? So I think it took a while to actually understand what that emotion is, name it, and type it. So there is some kind of processing that happened. So this awareness is very important, and it's a cognitive function. Yeah. So what is this awareness is, for example, there are specks. You see through the specks, okay? Or you can take off the specks and see the specks as different from you. This is exactly what is metacognition or emotional awareness. Seeing through is feeling the emotions. Seeing them separately is the the emotional awareness. That means seeing them as separate from you. So most of the time, whenever you're caught up in some complex emotional turmoils, the challenge becomes, to see yourself separate from those emotions. If you're able to do that, you have actually won 50% of the battle. So that is exactly called metacognition. Metacognition is that higher form of thinking where you're able to see yourself separate from your mind. That is becoming aware of your emotions. Actually, if you see, Arjuna had very, very high emotional intelligence. He was very much aware of what was happening within him at the onset of the battlefield. He was feeling, very lost. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava prichami tvam dharma sammuda cheta yashreyasyaham nishtitam bruhi tanve sishyasteham sadhimam tvam prapanna. Arjuna goes and he tells Krishna, Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava. Karpanya means miserly weakness. Yeah. Dosha means weakness. Karpanya means miserliness. Hatha svabhava, my character has become weak because of this miserliness. Prichami tvam dharma sammuda. And because of this dharma sammuda, I'm bewildered about what my duty is. He's going and telling Krishna. So that means he was totally aware of what was going on within him. And this is the most important aspect of emotional intelligence, to become aware of what your emotions are. And let me tell you, this one step is something so important. It sounds very simple, but it's very, very important. To be true to oneself, to get in touch with your real self, and to not be pretentious about who you are and what you are. Yeah, and get yourself out of the sorry state of comparison traps. This is very, very important first step. Self-awareness or emotional awareness, being in touch with your emotions and trying to understand them. Yes, so that is metacognition. That's, as I said, the higher form of thinking where a person is able to see their minds and thoughts as separate from themselves. It is a very important saying that you're not your thoughts, you're the thinker. You're the thinker, you're not your thoughts. I'll tell you, it's easier to overcome the identification with the body, but it's much difficult to, overcome the identification with the mind. Most of the time, or all of the time, we are identifying ourselves with our mind, but we are not our mind. We are separate from our minds. We are separate beings. We are thinking through our mind. Please try to get that difference. Yeah, makes a lot of difference in our lives. Yeah, these are much more deeper aspects of metacognition, but I wouldn't go into the details of it. Some student was asking me about how to develop intellectual skills in their particular studies. So students can actually utilize these aspects of metacognition to excel in their studies. There are awareness and regulation. By utilizing these strategies, there are some ways that they can excel in their studies as well. Okay. The second component of self-awareness, the first is metacognition or emotional self-awareness. The second aspect is accurate self-assessment. This is very important. Accurate self-assessment means being aware of one's own strengths and weaknesses simultaneously. Like if you see the Pandavas, each of the Pandavas had their unique skill. Yeah, like Yudhishthir Maharaj was very good at the spear fighting. Bhima was very good at the Gadha Yuddha, the mace fighting. Arjuna was very good and excellent as bowmanship. Nakula and Sahadeva were good at their own, sword fighting and axe fighting, etc. They had their own weapons, which they were very, really good at. So each of the 5 Pandavas knew what their strengths were. And they excelled in their respective strengths, never trying to compare themselves with each other or suffocate themselves with each other. Yeah, so that's how there is the component, one of the important component of self-awareness is to have an accurate self-assessment. What is my core strength? What is my core skill? So when you become aware of that, we don't artificially try to compare ourselves with others or try to get into zones that are not meant for us. Unfortunately, our modern education tries to put us into boxes that are predefined, and also our elders try to fit us into those boxes, not knowing if you really fit into it or not. That's the difference between Gita and modern education. Modern education actually is aimed at making you very skillful at some kind of, probably in some areas that makes you very good at earning money, let's say. But Bhagavad-gita and the scriptures and the Vedic education are those that help you tap into your true potential, identify it, and excel in it. That is what technically is called Swadharma, which Krishna speaks about so deeply in Bhagavad-gita, many points. Yeah, and this, by actually developing accurate self-assessment, it fosters the spirit of cooperation between each other, because one is not trying to artificially compare and compete. Yeah, I'll give you a small interesting example. I've recently heard this. Very nice, very interesting. During the Virata Parva, on their way back, Draupadi was feeling very tired. She couldn't walk. Yeah. So when the Pandavas married Draupadi, they had a pact that during a particular period of time, only one person acts as her husband, and the remaining 4 will be totally aloof from any emotion towards her. So that's the pact. So during that time, when they were traveling on foot, at that time, it was Yudhishthir Maharaj who was supposed to be her husband. So, but for some reason, yeah, they were walking and Draupadi was very tired. She couldn't walk. And they had to walk a long distance more. So who's the first person to actually take up the responsibility? Bhima, because he had enormous strength. So Bhima knew of his strength, and all the Pandavas also knew of his strength. But Bhima, interestingly, he knew his strength, but he also knew his weakness. He came and told, my dear Pandavas, see, I might be having the strength, but I am not as self-controlled as Arjuna. That is, it is not that I can carry Draupadi and still be so unattached as not thinking of her as my wife. So I would request Arjuna to carry her because he's more self-controlled. And Arjuna understands and he says, yes, I will take up this responsibility. And he carries Draupadi all the way back, being totally unattached. Yeah. So this is the impact of having one, accurate self-assessment. And Bhima knew of his strength and he knew of his weakness also. And at the same time, he also knew of Arjuna's strength. And they could make a right decision based on this. So these are multiple repercussions of having proper self-awareness, knowing one's own strengths and weaknesses. One will be able to appreciate even the other person's strengths and weaknesses, because of which so much of cooperation can foster. I mean, what I have stated is it's a unique example, but this can be applied in multiple ways in our own daily lives. In fact, if you see even in the whole Mahabharata, Yudhishthir Maharaj and Bhima, they both had very different competencies. Yudhishthir Maharaj was very good, very thoughtful person. Means he could really look into the future, take his time and make decisions based on that. On the other hand, Bhima was very prompt in his actions. In fact, he used to sometimes get irritated. Why does my brother take such a long time to make decisions? Why he doesn't act promptly? But later he understands the significance of that. And they in fact work cooperatively. Yeah, so Yudhishthir Maharaj is a dharmagya and Bhima is very prompt, immediate in his actions. Yeah, like, and they use their strengths and weaknesses to protect each other. Like when Bhima was caught in the coils of Nahusha. Nahusha is the name of a naga, a serpent. He couldn't release himself with his strength. But Yudhishthir Maharaj came and he could speak to that Nahusha, the Nagaraj, and he could utilize his intelligence and free Bhima from the coils of Nahusha. So in fact, he helped. So at that time, Yudhishthir Maharaj's thoughtfulness has helped in saving Bhima. And if you see, on the other hand, when there was the time of Jayadratha, who was trying to abduct Draupadi and take her away, Bhima immediately sprang into action and he wanted to punish Jayadratha then and there itself. And that kind of a prompt action really helped at that moment. So that's how their strengths have become as a matter of help to each other. Yeah, rather than, a source of envy. So accurate self-assessment is something that fosters cooperation, increases one's own focus on one's internal core genius, and to tap into the potential and grow into a full-fledged, confident individual, and in fact, a successful person. Because you're tapping into your own potential, you can be the best version of your own self. And in fact, do things that are far beyond what we would otherwise do by trying to artificially be someone else that we are not meant to be. So that's a beauty. That's a beauty of, self-awareness. So this is the second component is accurate self-assessment. What was the first component?
Emotional self-awareness.
Excellent. Who said that? Vaishnavi. Okay, good. I'm happy that you're all attentive. So the third and final aspect is, Vishnu Priya, right. So the third and final, as we're coming towards the closure of the class. So this will lead to something called self-confidence. The emotional self-awareness, along with accurate self-assessment, leads to self-confidence. Self-confidence, not just something that we put on for some time externally, no, but this is a self-confidence that is springing from deep within, that is long-lasting, that is undeterred by any circumstance. That kind of self-confidence one can achieve by actually becoming aware. Why is that leads to self-confidence? Because when you are true to yourself, when you really know what your strengths and weaknesses are, we are very honest with ourselves. We don't have to pretend who we are not. That is why it leads to something called self-confidence. It is, we lose confidence when we try to be someone whom we are not. This is our observation. As I gave you that example of faking in the resume. Sometimes we have to, fake in the resume some things that are not true. At that time, if we go to an interview, we're always thinking of what if that person asks this question, right? So I'm just giving a very gross example. But it's how it is. When we are true to ourselves, when we are honest with ourselves, we can be honest with others, and that broods self-confidence. And when there is self-confidence, more than anything, more than your own IQ, that's a driving force of success. And these are very deep concepts. And you wouldn't find these in any of the self-help books you find outside or any of the seminars you get outside. These are the concepts derived directly from Gita. So that's how they're very impactful. Okay, so this is how self-awareness helps. These are some different things. So it helps one choosing the right career path. I've made a short video actually, how self-awareness helps in making the right career, make the right choice in one's career path. I can probably put it in the Dropbox. You can see that it's a 2-minute video. It helps in making the right decision in choosing your profession. Yeah, because there's so many ways one can understand one's personality and what are the jobs that suit that particular personality. It helps in choosing the right partner. Self-awareness is so important. See, it helps us choose the right partner. Yeah, which we'll not regret about. So choosing the right partner is not hitting in the darkness, or it's not something that will happen by chance. One has to put a conscious effort of what is the relationship we are getting into for the rest of our life. It's not some, violence music going on in the background or some flowers falling from the sky, not the Bollywood style. It's a conscious choice a person has to make. If not, first the violins are, playing in the background, but later on it's the drums that will play. So one has to be really, self-aware to understand oneself so that one chooses the right life partner. Self-awareness also interestingly helps in dealing with addictions. There are multiple actually facets to this. Dealing with hurt or emotional outbursts, it helps in tolerating temptations and asking for help at the crucial time. Yeah, I can actually, each of this will take a lot of explanation if I get into the details of it. Probably, maybe I can explain one out of this. Let's say tolerating temptations. Yeah, self-awareness, tolerating temptations. How would you tolerate temptations if you're self-aware? So these days I hear so many stories about how in hostels and places, girls are so much into drinking. Yeah, and you have to stay together with your roommates. So how do you tolerate that? So here's where emotional intelligence comes into picture. Yeah. First of all, one who is emotionally aware, emotionally intelligent, becomes aware of what emotions they are going through in the association of such people. Yeah. They understand their strengths and weaknesses. That means, do I have any past positive experience, or do I hold any positive inclination towards this act? One assesses oneself. And what are my strengths? My strength is the ability to say no. Wow, you have already won the game. Or my weakness is I cannot say no. This is self-awareness. I cannot say no, so you should be very careful. You make a decision that when that drinking or anything is happening, I'll be out of that place. Simple. Yeah. And third is, the self-confidence. Of course, when you're aware that this is my weakness, I cannot say no, you're confident about what you want to do. And that's how you tolerate the temptation and get out of the place. And in fact, later on, there is something called self-regulation, which we talk about in the next week. And here's also where intelligence also comes into play. Intelligence helps you understand what are the repercussions of such an act. How do people walk? How do people talk after getting into this business of drinking? Is it desirable? Is it shameful? Is it pathetic? Is it dharmic, adharmic? All the analysis can happen because of a strong intelligence that is fed with dharma jnana. So that's how intelligence helps one tolerating temptations, and emotional intelligence helps in overcome them. Okay, so self-awareness that is why a very, very important component of our, to empower oneself in leading a happy life. And also, one of the interesting components of self-awareness is asking for help at the crucial time. You see, that's what Arjuna has done. Arjuna was very much aware what he was going through. He understood the crisis, the emotional crisis he was in. He was at the point of a breakdown. His lips were quivering. His whole complexion turned pale. And, who is this person there whose lips were quivering? Not an ordinary person, the best of all warriors, the most powerful of all the times. He could get such celestial weapons at such an early, small age of his life. And he could get big astras like Pashupatastra and all these weapons that were so humanly impossible. It is said that Arjuna could access those places of Himalayas which were not normally accessible to any human beings. And it was not accessible to any human beings because if for a person who has not maintained appropriate codes and conducts of celibacy, had no way to even see that place. But Arjuna could access that place. That was how powerful a warrior he was. And he went through this emotional crisis. And being totally aware of that crisis, he approached Lord Krishna, the right mentor, for help. And that is intelligence. Intelligence is to identify the emotional crisis you're going through and to consult the right person at the right time to make the right decision and right choice. And that takes a lot of intelligence. And that's the intelligence that Arjuna has exhibited. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you all very much. This is what the beginning of the session. Yeah, I'm coming back to question and answer sessions. Just 1 minute. So that's how I will summarize what I have spoken today. We have learned about what exactly are emotions, why it is important to, what is the importance of emotions as such. I said that, emotions underlie. Does anybody remember?
Mood. Interaction.
Behavior.
Interaction.
Decision making.
Excellent.
Decision making.
Great. Amazing. Very happy. There's such attentive listening from all of you. Very nice. Yeah, so that is why emotions are so important and they're so powerful. And that's why it's so important to be cognizant of these emotions, that is, aware. And not just be cognizant of one's own, but also others' emotions, and to regulate them and to direct them in constructive ways. And this is, in a nutshell, what emotional intelligence is about. Such a need of the hour. And then we spoke about what is emotional intelligence. I spoke briefly about the history, where the term originated. And I spoke about how turning to Bhagavad-gita for deeper insights into emotional intelligence. And I gave the examples from scriptures. And I also spoke about the 4 components of emotional intelligence. What are these 4 components?
Self-awareness, self-management, relationship management, and social awareness.
Excellent. Wow. That's beautiful. Yeah. So today we discussed about self-awareness. Yeah, that is about getting in touch with the real you. So real you, as stated in the scriptures, the Atma comprises of 5. What are those 5?
Body, mind, intelligence, soul, super soul.
Amazing. Yeah, these 5 together called Atma, interchangeably. So then I spoke about the chariot. Yeah, the chariot of mind. I mean, the chariot of the body and mind. The Bhagavad-gita, in fact, tells in the 3rd chapter, yeah, Indriyani paranyahur indriyebhyo param manaha manasastu para buddhir yo buddhe parasastu saha. Higher than the indriya, that is higher than the senses, is the mind. Higher than the mind is the intelligence. And higher than the intelligence is the self. Yeah, it shows it. Bhagavad-gita speaks about this gradual gradation from senses to the mind to the intelligence to the self. So that's how intelligence is very powerful. Yeah. So that is why emotional intelligence is all about utilizing the intellectual prowess to monitor, regulate, control, and direct the emotions in positive ways. So yeah, then we spoke about self-awareness, and we spoke 3 aspects of self-awareness. What were they?
Emotional self-awareness.
Yes.
Accurate self-awareness.
Accurate self-assessment. 3rd,
Self-confidence.
yeah, leading to self-confidence. So in accurate self-assessment, I gave some examples from the Puranas. Does somebody remember? Who had the accurate self-assessment?
Arjuna.
Pandavas.
Fine, Pandavas. Yeah, they were very very much aware of their own personal strengths and they didn't compare. Bhima, yes, Bhima was aware in the pastime of lifting Draupadi, and also Bhima and Yudhishthir. They were aware of their own strengths and weaknesses, and that led to cooperation and not competitiveness. So if we are honest with ourselves, we don't get into artificial comparisons, but we get into a spirit of cooperation. By ourselves being content with ourselves, we also become empathic towards others. That's the beauty of self-awareness. Okay, so that was wonderful discussing this concept with you all. So I can quickly take a couple of questions if any of you all have. Yes, any questions, comments? 8:16. Any questions?
Ma'am, can you please post self-awareness video that you have said?
Sure. I will. Sai Sri, which group you're in?
Ma'am, I'm not into any group. I have joined by some invitation from my friend.
Okay. Who's your friend? Because I'm just wondering how.
Shravya.
Mataji, she is my classmate.
Acha, Shravya. Okay, I will send you Shravya. Yeah, I'll send it to Shravya. Definitely. I can also post it in the Dropbox. You can refer to that. This will be uploaded on the YouTube. Okay, so anybody else has any further queries or questions, you can directly write to me. I will try to answer. Okay. Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure being with you this evening. I will meet you all again next week, same time. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. So I will end here.